May the stories we tell open hearts, heal old wounds, and remind us that even in life's hardest moments, grace still finds a way. Amen. Welcome to Mr. Favor Tales, where hearts heal and stories speak louder than words. Here, every tale is a doorway to reflection, redemption, and the kind of peace we all crave. If you believe in second chances, love that endures, and the kind of justice only life itself can deliver, then you're in the right place. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and hit that subscribe button. Your next favorite story begins right now. The mother-in-law tried to stop the wedding. Now she works for the bride. Emily Preston stood at the edge of the grand Thorne family dining room, feeling the weight of 1,000 years of old money pressing down on her modest soul. Crystal chandeliers glimmered above her like watching eyes, and every silver-rimmed plate on the long mahogany table seemed to ask, "What are you doing here?" At 32, Emily had built a life she could be proud of. A schoolteacher by profession, a sister by heart, and now a fiancée by fate. She never imagined herself tangled in the lives of the Chicago elite. Yet here she was, engaged to Richard Thorne, the soft-spoken son of one of the city's most powerful real estate families. But power, as she was learning, didn't always come in loud voices or sharp tongues. Sometimes it arrived wrapped in pearls, draped in silk, and smiling with thin lips like Victoria Thorne. From the moment Richard introduced Emily to his parents, the disapproval from his mother had been unmistakable. Victoria didn't need to say much. Her raised eyebrow, her carefully phrased compliments, her insistence on keeping things proper all told Emily what she already suspected. She wasn't the daughter-in-law Victoria had imagined for her only child. The first time Emily had dinner with the Thorne family, she wore her best navy dress, ironed it 3 times, and rehearsed how to greet a woman who once hosted senators for tea. But when Victoria saw her, she paused, just for a second, before offering a tight smile. "You're punctual," Victoria said. "Not beautiful, not kind, not even it's lovely to meet you. Just punctual." That night, Victoria talked more to the waiter than to Emily. Harold Thorne, Richard's father, was polite but distant, distracted by his wine and stocks. Richard sat beside her, squeezing her hand under the table, whispering that his mother just needs time. Emily believed him. She wanted to believe him. But time, as she learned, only sharpened the edges of Victoria's disapproval. 3 months later, they had a joint engagement party, except it felt like anything but joint. Victoria rented a ballroom in downtown Chicago, not the small garden Emily had dreamed of, not the quaint barn venue she'd pinned on her vision board, but a cold, echoing room filled with rich acquaintances who didn't know her name. When Emily arrived in a pastel blue dress her sister had helped her pick, Victoria greeted her with a smile. "Oh, that's what you chose to wear," she said, before turning to her assistant. "We'll need to change the color theme. Blue won't suit the table settings." Emily had barely made it to the welcome table before Victoria had already rearranged the flower choices, the seating, and the music playlist. "All for the guests," she said. "For propriety, for image." No one said, "For control," but everyone felt it. Emily's parents, ordinary small-town folks from Indiana, stood quietly in a corner during the party, overwhelmed by the spectacle. Her mother clutched her purse as if holding on to sanity. Her father, always a man of few words, simply nodded through conversations he didn't understand. Emily caught Victoria glancing at them, and then whispering to a waiter to move the family seating further down the hall. Richard noticed too, but said nothing. That was the worst part. Not Victoria's passive-aggressive dominance, but Richard's silence. Each time Victoria made a comment about Emily's taste, her background, her dress, her speech, Richard's only response was a sigh, a helpless glance, or a whispered apology that came too late. Emily tried not to resent him. He was gentle. He had grown up in this pressure cooker. But love without defense felt more like abandonment. At night, Emily found herself scrolling through bridal forums. She thought she was looking for centerpiece ideas, or affordable bridesmaid dresses, or tips for managing wedding stress. But what she was really looking for was proof she wasn't alone. And she found it. Hundreds of brides, across states and ages, sharing horror stories about mothers-in-law who wrecked their wedding plans. One post haunted her. "My mill wore a white gown to my wedding. My guest didn't know who the bride was." Another, she told my guests I was marrying her son for money. I cried the whole reception. Another, she changed the caterer behind my back. The food truck never showed up. We served chips and soda to 80 guests. Each story sounded more outrageous than the next, until Emily realized she was living one of her own. Victoria had already insisted on switching out Emily's favorite wedding dress, said it was too modest for a Thorn event. She had replaced Emily's cousin as a bridesmaid, citing photographic balance for the bridal party. She even told the family priest that we might need someone more media-trained for the ceremony sermon, because a certain senator might be attending. Weeks before the wedding, Emily sat with her mother at their old kitchen table in Indiana. Her mom stirred tea absent-mindedly and said, "Sweetheart, marriage doesn't begin with a wedding. It begins with how you weather the storm before it." Emily blinked. "Do you think this is a storm?" Her mother looked at her, eyes filled with quiet wisdom. "I think you're marrying a good man, but you're also marrying his family. And that family, well, they haven't made room for you yet." That sentence stuck with Emily, like an echo in an empty room. She was entering a house that had no open doors for her, and she wasn't sure Richard knew how to open any. The following Sunday, the couple toured the church where they planned to wed. Emily smiled at the stained glass windows, imagining a quiet, beautiful ceremony. But Victoria arrived minutes later, armed with a clipboard and a sneer. "The aisle is too narrow for a proper entrance," she said, "and the lighting makes everyone look washed out. We'll need better photographers. And fewer flowers. Simple is more tasteful." Emily stood, stunned. The church had been her childhood dream. She'd attended Easter services here, cried through funerals here, kissed Richard for the first time under the willow tree outside. But to Victoria, it was just another checklist item, another thing to fix. That night, Emily sat by herself in the bathtub, wedding binder on her lap, tea gone cold beside her. Tears spilled into the pages. This wasn't a dream wedding anymore. It was a battleground. And she was losing, slowly, painfully, silently. And worst of all, she didn't know if Richard was even fighting with her, or watching from the sidelines. She closed her eyes, and somewhere inside her, a decision began to form. A decision that would change everything. The calendar flipped, and with each passing day, Victoria's grip tightened. What began as subtle comments turned into direct commands. Emily had hoped that once the excitement of the engagement wore off, things would calm down. But instead, it became clear this wedding wasn't going to be hers. Not unless she fought for it, and she wasn't sure how to do that without losing everything. Victoria had taken over the entire planning committee. "She has experience with charity galas," Richard said, trying to soothe Emily during a late-night conversation. "She has experience taking over," Emily replied, her voice brittle. "That's not the same thing." The original list Emily had prepared with Richard was simple. Close. Family, childhood friends, and a few of her teacher colleagues. They wanted something intimate, something meaningful. But by the time Victoria was done revising, the new guest list had ballooned past 300 names. Names Emily didn't recognize. Donors, society columnists, real estate investors, and women with names. Like Bitsy and Marlene, who hadn't spoken to Richard in 10 years. "Where are my uncles?" Emily asked, squinting at the spreadsheet Victoria emailed her. Victoria had shrugged. "There's limited seating. We had to be strategic." Emily stared at her, voice caught in her throat. Strategic, like her family was a tactical liability. Even the cake was a battlefield. Victoria showed up late to the tasting appointment, bringing along a friend from her bridge club who claimed to be a cake connoisseur. Emily had her heart set on a lavender vanilla 3-tier, simple and elegant. Victoria made a face. "It tastes like lotion," she declared after one bite. Something chocolate or champagne infused would be more mature. Emily tried to protest, but Victoria simply placed an order for her own preference before Emily could finish chewing. By the end of that tasting, even the baker, a jolly man named Marcus, gave Emily a sympathetic glance as if to say, "Sorry, honey, but you've lost control." Emily and her best friend Nora met with a florist the next week, a woman named Dahlia, who ran a charming little shop near the lake. They discussed peonies, eucalyptus, and warm spring colors. Victoria wasn't invited, but somehow she arrived anyway. She breezed in halfway through, flipping through Dahlia's display books and criticizing every suggestion. "This arrangement looks like something from a funeral," she said, tossing aside a bouquet Emily had loved. Then she added, "Besides, pale pink washes out in photographs. And we don't want Emily looking drained, do we?" That word, drained, hit deeper than intended, because that's exactly how Emily felt. Each time Emily tried to bring it up to Richard, he seemed caught in a whirlpool of guilt and fear. "She means well," he said one night. "She's steamrolling me," Emily replied. "She just wants to help. She wants to erase me." Richard sighed, rubbing his temples. "I'm trying to keep the peace." Emily stared at him. "Whose peace?" "Because I'm drowning over here." He didn't have an answer. It should have been sacred, the moment every bride dreamed of, choosing the dress. Emily had arranged a private appointment at a bridal boutique with her mother, Nora, and 2 cousins. They laughed, cried, and narrowed it down to 2 elegant options, one sleek satin, one romantic lace. Then Victoria showed up. Without invitation, without apology, she sat down in the corner chair like a queen reclaiming her throne, arms folded, eyes cold. When Emily stepped out in the lace gown, the one she knew in her soul, was the one, Victoria raised her hand before anyone could speak. "Too provincial," she said flatly. "It looks like something off a discount rack." Emily's mother looked stunned. Nora's mouth fell open. But Emily just stood there in the mirror, her reflection shaking. She didn't cry. Not in front of her. Not yet. That night, Victoria sent a group email, copying Richard, Harold, and even Emily's maid of honor, stating that she had gone ahead and confirmed a new dress order. "A modern designer. More suitable," she said. "We need to present well." Emily read the email 3 times. She forwarded it to Nora with one word, "war." Nora replied, "You gonna let her do this to you?" Emily didn't answer. Because the truth was, she didn't know what to do. This wasn't her world. Emily was a school teacher, not a debutante. She didn't know how to navigate these upper-crust power plays. Every move Victoria made was covered in sugar and ice, kind words with knife-sharp edges. And Richard, kind, paralyzed Richard, was stuck in the middle, afraid, to confront a mother who'd ruled his life for 35 years. The rehearsal dinner was held in a luxury hotel near the river. The venue was stunning. The food smelled divine, but the seating chart was a bomb waiting to explode. Emily's family had been placed at a separate table, far from the thorns, near the kitchen entrance. The photographer, at Victoria's command, focused almost entirely on Harold and Victoria's side. Emily's father whispered, "Are we guests or staff?" Her mother reached for her hand under the table. During the speeches, Victoria rose with champagne in hand. "This is a proud day for the Thorne family," she began. "Our son is marrying, and we hope, sincerely, that this union brings him strength, focus, and refinement." Not one word about Emily, not her name, not her family, not her dreams, just veiled praise of Richard, and hints that he was bettering himself by getting married. Emily stared at the floor. Richard sat beside her, frozen. And when Victoria finished, eyes dry, voice smug, a single slow clap came from the back of the room. It was Nora. She stood and said, "Wow, that was a toast?" Victoria smiled coldly. It was a celebration. Emily would remember that moment for years, because in that instant, something shifted. A rage, quiet but unshakable, began to build inside her. This was no longer about wedding colors or cake flavors. This was about dignity, and it was slipping through her fingers. Back at the hotel, Emily took off her makeup in silence. Richard sat on the edge of the bed, jacket still on. "I know this is hard," he said. "No," Emily replied. "This is cruel." He looked up. "What do you want me to do?" She met his eyes, calm and deadly serious. "I want you to stand beside me, not just in the church, but in life. If you can't do that, I don't know how we move forward." He opened his mouth, closed it again, then whispered, "I'll try." Emily nodded, but in her heart, she wasn't sure try would be enough. Not anymore. Are you enjoying the story so far? At Mr. Favortales, every twist is a mirror of real life, and every victory tastes sweeter when it's earned. If you believe in justice, redemption, and second chances, give this video a like. Drop your thoughts in the comments, and share it with someone who needs it. And don't forget to subscribe. Your next favorite story is one click away. The morning air carried a chill that didn't match the season. Spring had bloomed across Chicago's parks and streets, but inside the bridal suite, the tension was thick enough to choke on. Emily sat alone by the vanity mirror. Her makeup team had left. Her hair was curled, her veil untouched. Her bridesmaids whispered near the window, careful not to disturb her. Something in the air felt off. Then the door opened, and in walked Victoria Thorne, without knocking, without a smile. She didn't look at Emily. She addressed the bridesmaids. "You can all head down early," she said in her silk voice. "The photographers are already on site." There was no warmth in her words, just a directive. The bridesmaids glanced at Emily for permission. She gave a small nod. They left. Now it was just the two of them. Victoria walked over to the side table and opened a small velvet box. "This is the necklace Richard's great-grandmother wore at her wedding," she said, holding it up. "I brought it for tradition." Emily didn't answer. "You're not wearing the lipstick I sent you," Victoria added, folding her arms. Emily glanced up in the mirror. "No, I'm not." There was a beat of silence. "I hope you realize," Victoria said, "that this family has built its name on image, respect, order." Emily turned from the mirror and stood. Slowly. "I'm not your family's image," she said. "I'm a person." Victoria raised an eyebrow. "Then act like one. Don't embarrass us." Emily didn't blink. "You mean don't embarrass you?" Victoria smiled, tight and cold. "You've always been too emotional. I just want things to be smooth." Emily looked her dead in the eye. "You've controlled everything. The cake, the flowers, the music, the guests. You tried to erase my parents. You tried to erase me. But not today. Today, I walk down that aisle because I love Richard. Not because you approved of me." Victoria's eyes narrowed, but she didn't reply. She left the room in silence. And Emily, for the first time in months, felt like she could breathe. Caught in the heat of family drama. Don't worry. Emily's not done fighting. If you've ever stood up for yourself when it mattered most, let us know in the comments. And be sure to like and share. Your voice might inspire someone else who needs strength today. But the drama wasn't over. As Emily stepped into the dressing room, her heart stopped. Her wedding gown, the one she had finally chosen after months of back and forth, wasn't there. Instead, a completely different gown was hanging on the rack. Sleek, strapless, designer. The one Victoria had wanted. Panic rose in Emily's throat. "Nora," she called, her voice cracking. Nora burst in, took one look, and gasped. "Where's your dress?" Emily could hardly speak. "It's gone. This isn't mine." They searched the suite, the garment bag, the hallway, the backups. Nothing. Nora's face twisted with rage. "She didn't." Emily sat down slowly. "She did." Her hands shook. But instead of crying, she started laughing. "I should have known," Emily said. She couldn't resist one last power move. Downstairs in the church foyer, guests were beginning to arrive. And that's when Emily saw her. Victoria, in a floor-length peach gown. From a distance, it looked almost white. Lacy, elegant, timed to shine under the chapel lights. Emily's eyes burned. She walked up the stairs anyway, heart pounding in her chest. She took a breath, squared her shoulders, and turned to Nora. "Get me something, anything. I'll walk down in my bathrobe if I have to. But I'm getting married." Nora beamed. "Now that's the woman I know." They scrambled together. A backup gown, off-rack, but simple and honest. Emily stepped into it, no hesitation. She tied her hair back herself. No veil, no jewels, just herself. The music swelled. Emily stepped into the aisle, and from that moment on, everything else faded. Richard stood at the altar, eyes wide, emotion on his face like she'd never seen before. And she saw him, and he saw her. Not the dress, not the chaos, not the sabotage, just her. Victoria sat on the front pew, pale and unreadable. And when the photographer raised the camera, Victoria stood and tried to step into the aisle for a picture. But Richard did something no one expected. He held up his hand and gently said, "Mom, please sit down." The room froze. Victoria blinked, but she obeyed. And Emily's heart soared. They exchanged their vows under the cathedral's stained glass glow, and when the minister declared them husband and wife, Emily knew something had changed. Not just her name, not just her status, but her power. She had taken it back, without rage, without revenge, just truth. And now, she had it. Not because Victoria allowed it, but because she owned it. At Mr. Favortales, we celebrate the quiet victories and the storms weathered with grace. If Emily's journey reminds you of a time you found your voice, hit that like button. Share this story to uplift someone else and subscribe for more tales that mirror real life with all its raw lessons. The pictures arrived in the mail in a pale gold envelope. Emily hesitated before opening it, the memory of Victoria's sabotage still fresh. But inside the photos, she saw something different. Not the missing dress, not the missing flowers, not even the tension. She saw Richard, holding her hand, eyes filled with something new, conviction. And she saw herself, not polished, not flawless, but real, powerful. Richard had started pulling away from the family business, subtly at first. He no longer showed up for board dinners. He skipped weekly check-ins with his father's associates. When Harold asked about the Thorn development in Lincoln Park, Richard simply said, "That's not my project anymore." Victoria didn't ask questions, but her silence was louder than 1,000 arguments. She began calling Richard at strange hours, checking on family affairs, asking for updates she no longer had a right to. When Richard told her he was taking time off to reassess his life, she hung up without saying goodbye. Back at their modest apartment, Emily was busy. A notebook lay open on the dining table, filled with names, scribbles, and color swatches. She was building something, slowly, purposefully, out of the very pain she had endured. A wedding consulting business, but not just any kind. She called it Peace and Petals. Her tagline? Weddings without the war. Nora jumped in immediately. So did two of Emily's former students' mothers, who had suffered similar mill nightmares. Their first clients? A same-sex couple whose families refused to attend their wedding. Emily helped them organize a small lakeside ceremony that turned into a viral online hit. Word spread, and with each booking, Emily's confidence soared. She was no longer the trembling bride looking for approval. She was the boss now. Are you loving Emily's glow-up? Life doesn't just hand us peace, we fight for it. If you've ever built something out of broken pieces like Emily's business, share your journey in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Your story might empower someone else today. Victoria and Harold Thorn had built their empire on legacy. But empires need heirs, and Richard was no longer interested. Without him, Harold tried to sell off a property block in Uptown that fell through at the last second. A legal battle followed. Stock prices dipped. Their firm took a reputation hit. Victoria tried to save face, attending luncheons, galas, charity events. But whispers grew louder. "Where's Richard these days? I heard he's taking a break? I heard he left to start a school with his wife. Or was it a bakery?" Worse still, the social circles she once dominated began to fade. New wives, younger and flashier, took her place on event boards. One afternoon she came home and sat in her car for 20 minutes, just staring at the steering wheel. For the first time in decades, she didn't know what to do. It came from an unknown number. "Hello?" Emily answered, cradling her phone between her shoulder and cheek as she unpacked chair covers for an event. "Emily, it's Victoria." Emily froze. The entire world seemed to hush. I heard you're hiring," Victoria said, her voice awkward. "I need part-time work." "I thought perhaps—" Emily stood motionless. The woman who once tried to erase her was now asking for a job. There was a long silence before Emily replied, "When can you come in for an interview?" Victoria walked into Peace and Petals in a beige sweater and gray slacks. No pearls, no heels, no clipboard. Emily didn't gloat. She didn't smirk. She simply welcomed her with a calm, firm handshake. The interview lasted 20 minutes. Victoria spoke of her charity event experience, her scheduling skills, and basic admin knowledge. She avoided eye contact. Emily hired her on the spot, not out of pity, but because she knew she could use the help. Besides, this wasn't about revenge. This was about boundaries. Victoria would answer phones, track payments, organize boxes of centerpieces. She would work for Emily. And that was justice enough. If that moment gave you chills, where the tables turn not with vengeance but with dignity, go ahead and hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to be reminded that quiet strength can move mountains. And if you haven't already, subscribe for more unforgettable life lessons, only here at Mr. Favortales. Victoria Thorne's first day at Peace and Petals began with a paper jam. She had never used the new office printer. She bent awkwardly under the tray, muttering, while Emily typed invoices 2 feet away, pretending not to notice. The office smelled of lavender and fresh ground coffee. It was bright, cozy, and nothing like the marble conference rooms Victoria was used to. She wore no makeup. Her once flawless manicure chipped as she stapled brochures. When clients arrived, she stood and smiled politely, but few recognized her. Those who did murmured afterward, "Is that Mrs. Thorne?" At lunchtime, Victoria sat stiffly in the break room with 2 other staffers, Nora and an intern named Tasha. She drank tea from a chipped mug. No crystal goblet, no wine spritzers. Conversations were casual. Books, Netflix, dogs, kids. Victoria tried to join in but faltered. She hadn't read a novel in years that wasn't about estate planning. "Have you ever used Slack?" Tasha asked once, trying to be helpful. "I prefer handwritten notes," Victoria replied. Emily watched all of it from a distance. She said little, offered no special treatment. Victoria, for the first time in decades, blended into the background. Victoria once directed hotel managers and fundraisers with a wave of her diamond-ringed hand. Now, she took orders from Emily. And Emily was firm. "Victoria, we need the RSVP spreadsheet updated by 4. Victoria, can you check the florist delivery for next week's client? Victoria, please don't rearrange the centerpieces unless it's been approved." The old Victoria might have snapped, but this version only nodded, took notes, and kept her voice low. There were missteps. A wrong address mailed to a bride. A double-booked call. But Emily never embarrassed her. She corrected her gently but clearly, and it stung, not because Emily was cruel, but because she wasn't. Ever been in a position where life humbled someone who once looked down on you? Drop a comment if you've lived that kind of moment, or watched someone grow through their own fall. And if you're loving how Emily leads with quiet grace, hit like and share this. With a friend who needs a reminder, respect earns more than fear ever will. Days turned into weeks. Victoria began arriving early. She stopped correcting everyone's grammar in memos. She even brought in bagels once, a silent olive branch. Emily accepted them with a nod. Once, when the copier jammed again, Victoria fixed it without a word. She even wrote the instructions down for others. Tasha smiled. "Thanks, Ms. V." Victoria blinked. "You're welcome, dear." One afternoon, a last-minute bride called in tears. Her mother had refused to attend the wedding because the groom was from another culture. Emily was on a delivery run, so Nora tried calming her. Nothing worked. Then Victoria quietly picked up the phone. "I understand how painful it is," she said gently. "You deserve joy, not judgment. And no matter who stands beside you, you're not alone." There was a pause on the line. Then soft sobs. After the call, Nora whispered, "That was really kind." Victoria nodded, her voice tight. "I know what it's like to try to control love. It doesn't end well." That evening, Emily watched Victoria organize receipts with her glasses slipping down her nose. There was something different in her posture. A humility, a loss, maybe. Or perhaps just exhaustion from years of pretending to be invincible. Emily didn't feel victorious. She felt understanding. That night, she told Richard, "She's not the same woman who nearly ruined our wedding." Richard nodded. "And you're not the same woman who let her." They smiled. For the first time in a long while, it felt like peace. At Mr. Favortales, we know every cold heart carries a story. And sometimes, healing comes in whispers, not headlines. If you've ever found peace where you least expected it, give this video a like, drop your story in the comments, and hit subscribe. Your next chapter might start right here. It was mid-October when everything changed. The air was crisp. The office windows fogged at the edges. Autumn sunlight spilled into Peace and Petals. touching every dusty file folder and ribbon spool with a golden glow. Emily had stayed late. Most of the team had gone home. She was reviewing vendor quotes when she heard quiet footsteps behind her. "Do you need help with the binders?" Victoria asked softly. Emily turned, surprised. "I thought you left." Victoria shifted her purse from one arm to the other. "I was waiting." Emily blinked. "Waiting for what?" Victoria took a breath, then sat down. "I've been difficult," she said, "and proud, and rude." Emily didn't respond. Victoria looked at her, not with her usual poise, but with raw, trembling honesty. "I thought if I controlled the wedding, I could control the change. I didn't want to lose Richard, and I thought, if I couldn't shape you, I'd lose him forever." Emily's throat tightened. "But I see now," Victoria continued, "you didn't take him from me. You gave him back, stronger, with a life of his own." A long silence stretched between them. Then Victoria whispered, "I'm sorry." Emily stared at her, at this woman who had once humiliated her in front of hundreds, who tried to erase her from her own wedding, who treated her as unworthy. And yet, now she saw the loneliness in Victoria's eyes, the fear, the exhaustion. Emily didn't cry. She just exhaled. "Thank you," she said. Victoria blinked. "That's all?" Emily nodded. "I've already healed. The apology isn't for me. It's for you." Victoria looked down, lips trembling. Then, in a move no one would have expected, she reached across the desk and gently squeezed Emily's hand. They sat for 20 minutes, just talking. About nothing and everything. Old recipes, Richard's baby photos, fundraisers gone wrong. Emily learned that Victoria once wanted to be a journalist before she married Harold, that she used to write poetry. Victoria learned that Emily always dreamed of opening a flower shop as a little girl, that she'd worked 3 jobs in college and still sent money home to her siblings. The air between them softened. Walls lowered. The next day, Victoria brought in 2 lattes and a sticky note. On the note was written, "Still learning. Thank you for your patience." Emily smiled. That afternoon, she added Victoria to the client briefing emails for the first time. That evening, Richard came home to find Emily humming in the kitchen. "Victoria called me today," he said. "Oh," she said, "you're that tolerable." Emily laughed. "High praise." Richard pulled her close. "She also said you're the best thing that ever happened to me." Emily's breath caught. "Maybe she's finally starting to see what I've known all along," Richard added. Emily smiled. "Or maybe she's starting to see who she is too." This is where we see what true change looks like, not in fancy speeches, but in quiet, consistent effort. If you've ever had to rebuild trust or watch someone transform through humility, hit that like button. Share this episode with someone navigating healing, and subscribe for more heartfelt stories, only on Mr. Favortales. January came fast, and with it a rush of wedding bookings. Peace and Petals was thriving. Valentine's season approached, and Emily's team barely kept up. Brides were calling. Vendors needed RE confirmations. One bride had a cake emergency. Another changed venues last minute. Nora fell sick. Tasha had finals. Chaos brewed. And that's when Victoria stepped up. Not with a clipboard, not with critique. With coffee, with calm, with clarity. Emily watched from her desk as Victoria calmly organized the emergency tasks into a spreadsheet. She called the caterer, scheduled pickups, reprinted menus. She even helped a nervous bride fix a broken clasp on her dress. She never tried to lead. She didn't bark orders. She simply filled the gaps, quietly and competently. When a florist's delivery truck ran late, Victoria offered to drive across town to pick up backup blooms herself. When a mother of the bride panicked about seating charts, Victoria listened, really listened, and printed a fresh set without judgment. She didn't say, "I've done this before." She said, "What do you need me to do?" Growth isn't about flashy turnarounds. It's about daily effort. If you've seen someone change not by saying sorry but by doing better, comment below. Let's celebrate the victories that come from showing up day after day. And don't forget to like and share. Someone else may need to hear this story today. One Saturday, Emily had 2 weddings on the same day. The team was split. Everything was stretched thin. Emily turned to Victoria. "I need you to run the vendor line for the Barnes wedding," she said. "Solo?" Victoria blinked. "You trust me?" "I do," Emily replied. "You've earned it." That day, Victoria worked a 10-hour shift, on her feet, rain drizzling on her blazer, her phone glued to her hand as she coordinated florals, catering, DJ arrival, and chair setup. When the bride hugged her after the event, tears in her eyes, Victoria nearly cried herself. No one applauded. No one needed to. Because it wasn't about credit anymore. Later that week, Emily brought in pizza and sparkling cider. To the team that pulled off double weddings, she toasted. And to the woman who once rearranged my entire reception behind my back, but now saves receptions from falling apart, everyone laughed. Even Victoria. She raised her plastic cup. To redemption and working printers, laughter echoed in the office. Emily caught her eye. They both smiled. Something had changed. This wasn't just a working relationship anymore. It was becoming a kind of family. That month, Emily gave Victoria her first bonus. It wasn't much, but it came with a handwritten note. "Thank you for learning with us, not leading over us. You've taught us as much as we've taught you, Emily." Victoria kept the note in her purse for weeks. That's the power of grace, giving someone the room to become better and watching them rise into it. If this chapter moved you, click like, drop a comment, and share it forward. Stories like this don't just entertain, they heal. And at Mr. Favor Tales, that's what we're all about. Subscribe for more. One Thursday morning, Emily opened the mailbox and found an envelope marked in familiar cursive. Inside was a handwritten letter from Victoria. "Emily, I've spent a lifetime pretending that control equals love. That image matters more than honesty. You broke that cycle, not by fighting me, but by being better than me when I couldn't be kind. I've watched you build something with your bare hands. I've watched my son smile more in 1 year than I've seen in 10. You've made a home where power doesn't sit at the table, grace does. I want you to know that I see you. Not just as my daughter-in-law, but as the woman who taught me how to let go. Thank you for not giving up on me, Victoria." Emily sat down slowly, the letter shaking in her hand. She wasn't the girl who used to cry in the bathtub over guest lists anymore. She was someone who had taught a woman like Victoria how to love differently. That week, the team at Peace and Petals met to discuss a new initiative, Legacy Weddings, a campaign targeting older couples, second marriages, and blended families. Victoria pitched the idea. She even offered to share her old charity contact list to find clients. "Redemption-themed ceremonies," she said with a small smile, "where past mistakes meet fresh starts." Everyone loved it. For once, Victoria didn't dominate the meeting. She contributed, then stepped back, let others shine. Emily watched her, a strange warmth growing in her chest. This was no longer about survival. This was about legacy. And it wasn't Harold's name or the Thorn fortune anymore. It was the one they were building together. One honest bride, one quiet son, and one humbled matriarch, all moving forward. Ever watched someone grow into their second chance? Or maybe you became the version of yourself that no one saw coming. Comment below. Let this be a safe space for real stories. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You never know who needs this story today. At Easter, Emily and Richard hosted dinner at their apartment. Emily's father grilled steaks outside. Her mother brought apple pie. Nora wrangled the playlist. And Victoria? She set the table. No pearls, no designer heels. Just a soft pink sweater and rolled-up sleeves. She laughed with Tasha. She hugged Emily's mother and asked for the pie recipe. When Richard gave a toast, he didn't just thank his wife. He said, "To the women in my life, both of you, who remind me daily that love doesn't come with terms and conditions." Victoria's eyes glistened. Emily's did too. And in that quiet moment, with candles lit, food shared, and no photographers watching, the real wedding happened. The family one. A few weeks later, Victoria stopped by Emily's office with a small box. Inside was a folded slip of paper. It was a copy of her will. Emily's name was listed as executor. "I want you to know," Victoria said, "that I trust you to carry things forward. Not money, not mansions, but integrity." Emily swallowed hard. "That's a lot." Victoria smiled. So were you. This story isn't just about a wedding. It's about what happens when women stop competing and start understanding. If this message found its way into your heart, click like, drop a word in the comments, and share it with someone who needs hope today. And of course, subscribe, because here at Mr. Favor Tales, real stories still matter. 6 months into the Legacy Weddings campaign, Peace and Petals was invited to speak at a high-profile wedding industry gala in downtown Chicago. The event would be covered by blogs, radio shows, and even 2 regional news outlets. The theme? When Grace Replaces Glitter. The evolution of modern weddings. The organizers specifically asked if Emily, the woman who turned a wedding disaster into a movement, would share her story. Emily hesitated. She didn't love attention, but something tugged at her. This wasn't about fame. It was about women like her, women who had been silenced, minimized, pushed aside, and still rose. 2 days before the event, Emily sat at her desk, biting a pen cap, unsure how to craft her speech. "I'll help," Victoria offered gently. "If that's okay." Emily paused, then nodded. Together, they sat in the small conference room, sorting through memories. For the first time, they co-authored something, not just a business plan or a seating chart, but a message. Emily wore a navy blue dress, simple, elegant, without the weight of proving anything. Victoria stood backstage, now a senior coordinator in the business, wearing a modest black blazer and flats. When Emily stepped to the podium, the room fell silent. "I didn't come from power," she began. "I came from patience. I didn't plan for my wedding to fall apart, but it did. And from those pieces, I built a business. And somehow a family." She paused. "And the woman who once tried to break me now stands beside me as my biggest ally." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Victoria stepped forward, took her place beside Emily. Applause erupted. But neither woman smiled for the cameras. They looked at each other, and they knew this was their real wedding photo. Ever stood on a stage, not of wood and lights, but of life, where your strength had to speak for itself? Share that moment in the comments. Let someone know they're not alone in their climb. And if you haven't yet, hit like and subscribe. Stories like this one might just save someone's hope. At the back of the room sat a young woman, barely 25, newly engaged, teary-eyed. She approached Emily afterward. "My fiancé's mom is hard," she said. "But watching you two tonight gave me hope." Emily smiled. "She's not your enemy," she said. "She's just not healed yet." Back at the office the next week, the team surprised Victoria with a small plaque. "Assistant of the Year, for the one who went from commands to compassion." Everyone clapped, even the male guy. Victoria cried. For the first time in public, Emily put an arm around her shoulder. "Turns out," she whispered, "you're good at beginnings too. Some stories don't end. They evolve, through time, children, and quiet transformation." If you believe in legacy, love, and the beauty of second chances, like this video, leave a comment, and subscribe to Mr. Favor Tales, because your next chapter might be your most powerful. Spring returned, not just to the trees outside Peace and Petals, but to Emily's heart. She stood in the front room of their new home, one she and Richard had bought together, barefoot on hardwood floors, humming softly. Her hand rested on her belly. Pregnant, 6 months. And this time there were no overbearing planners, no meddling voices, no forced gestures. Just peace. And quiet, fierce joy. Victoria reacted differently than anyone expected. She didn't throw a baby shower gala. She didn't dictate nursery colors. She arrived one morning, unannounced, with a freshly laundered box of old baby clothes she'd kept from Richard's infancy. "These are clean," she said. "And optional." Emily smiled. "I'd love to see them." Victoria paused, then whispered, "I never got it right with Richard. I don't want to miss my second chance." Emily touched her hand. "Then don't." Have you ever witnessed a transformation so quiet and real that it melted years of pain? Or maybe you're still waiting on one. Drop a note in the comments. Your vulnerability might be someone else's hope. And please like and share. Mr. Favor Tales is where healing finds a home. One Sunday afternoon, Emily and Richard sat on the porch sipping tea. "Have you thought of names?" he asked. "I have," Emily said. "If it's a girl, I want to name her Grace. Richard looked over, surprised. After the one thing that saved us all. Later that night, they told Victoria. She gasped. That name means more than you know. When the big day came, the hospital room buzzed with nurses, machines, and the rhythm of new life. Victoria waited outside, sitting beside Emily's mom in a quiet, prayerful silence. Hours passed. Then the nurse stepped out and said, "You can come in." Victoria walked in slowly. She saw Emily holding a tiny bundle, her face tired but glowing. "She's here," Emily whispered. "Meet Grace Marie Thorne." Tears streamed down Victoria's face. She didn't ask to hold her. She waited. Emily looked at her. "Would you like to?" Victoria nodded, trembling. She cradled the baby like something sacred, something she never thought she'd deserve. 3 months later, Victoria stood beside Emily in the front hall of Peace and Petals. They were hosting their first mother-daughter legacy luncheon, an idea sparked by their story, now shared widely. Women gathered from across the Midwest. Some were brides, some were mothers-in-law. All were seeking healing. Victoria gave a short speech. "I used to think power meant control, but power, real power, is learning to love someone you don't understand. My daughter-in-law taught me that, and now I get to learn it all over again. From my granddaughter." Applause erupted. Emily stepped beside her, and together they lifted Grace high. That's what legacy really is. Not what you build, but what you pass on. If you felt the power of this moment, hit like, comment what you're walking away with, and subscribe. This is Mr. Favor Tales, where stories don't just entertain. They teach, they restore, and they remind us it's never too late for Grace. Little Grace Thorne was now 5 years old, curious, bold, and forever dragging flower petals around the office. She'd taken to helping her mother set up mock weddings using paper plates, hair ties, and stuffed animals as guests. One day she pointed at Victoria and asked, "Were you always nice?" Victoria laughed until tears came. "No," she said, "but I got better." Grace nodded solemnly. "Good, because my Teddy doesn't like mean people." Emily watched from across the room, hand over her heart. That one moment told her everything she needed to know. By now, Peace and Petals had grown into one of the region's most sought-after wedding consultancies, known not just for events, but for emotional rescue. Emily began mentoring new planners, mostly women, mostly broken in some way. Divorced, dismissed, disrespected. She taught them not just how to set a table, but how to stand their ground. "She saved my career," one mentee later wrote online. "And I'm pretty sure she saved me too." Who helped you become the person you are today? Or maybe you are someone's turning point. Tell us in the comments. Like and share to honor those quiet mentors who lift others without seeking a spotlight. And don't forget to subscribe. Stories like this one don't just end, they ripple. One rainy afternoon, Emily found Victoria sitting in the back office surrounded by cardboard boxes. "Are we moving?" Emily teased. "No," Victoria replied. "I'm clearing space. Old files, gala invites, press clippings from the Thorne era, decades of curated status. I kept all of this," Victoria said, "because I thought it made me somebody." Emily nodded gently. "It told your story, only the part I used to hide behind." They sat in silence. Then Victoria reached into the deepest box and pulled out an old framed photo, her and Richard, age 10, standing beside a baby blue cake. "He hated this day," she said. "I made the whole party about impressing donors, not him." She sighed. "I've done so much harm out of fear." Emily put her hand on hers. "You're doing more good now out of love." Emily updated the company branding that summer. No fanfare, just a new footer on the website. Founded by Emily Preston Thorne. Sustained by every woman who's ever chosen grace over bitterness. Victoria saw it one morning, said nothing. But when Emily passed her office, she noticed the older woman dabbing her eyes behind a legal pad. Before the close of the fiscal year, Victoria handed Emily a folded envelope. It wasn't a resignation, it was a trust. "Emily, I've changed my will, not to leave you things, but to give you space. You now co-own the entire Thorne Charitable Trust. Do with it what I didn't. Make the world better. Love, Victoria." The hall was filled with light. Lush garden-themed decor framed the room. Lanterns swayed from the ceiling. The smell of roses, vanilla, and nostalgia floated through the air. Emily and Richard were celebrating their 10th anniversary, not with extravagance, but with sincerity. No press, no staged photos, just friends, family, team members. And Grace, now 10, handing out guest programs in a pink jumpsuit and glitter shoes. Nora gave a short speech. So did Tasha, now a regional planner with her own small firm thanks to Emily's mentorship. Then it was Victoria's turn. She stood, gray streaks in her carefully pinned hair, posture straight, voice clear. "I once believed that family was about image," she began, "and I nearly destroyed mine trying to preserve that illusion." She paused, eyes scanning the room. But then came Emily, a woman I fought and feared because she had everything I never earned: kindness, patience, and the strength to choose silence over vengeance. Emily's eyes glistened. "And now," Victoria said, "she is not just my daughter-in-law. She is the legacy I never saw coming." Later that night, Richard stood with his arm around Emily, watching Grace dance with her grandparents. "You still think it was crazy to marry me?" he whispered. Emily smiled. "Yes, but I'd do it again. Even with the mother-in-law from reality TV." He laughed. "You fixed us." "No," she said. "We fixed each other." As the evening ended, Grace tugged Emily's dress. "Mom? Yes, baby? Are you going to tell your story to other people?" Emily kneeled. "Why do you ask?" Grace looked around. "Because I think some people need to know it's okay to forgive, even if someone really messes up." Emily kissed her forehead. "We're already telling it," she said. "One heart at a time." That night, after the guests left, Emily sat in the quiet hall barefoot, sipping tea. Victoria joined her with 2 cups. "No fans," Victoria said. "No critics either," Emily replied. They looked at each other and laughed. Then Victoria said, "You know, if I could go back, I'd still make mistakes, but I'd listen earlier." Emily looked at her. "And I'd speak up sooner." They clinked their mugs. And in that simple act, sealed a story that had once been about war, but now echoed only peace. This has been The Mother-in-Law Tried to Stop the Wedding. Now She Works. For the bride, a tale of reversal, redemption, and the resilience of love. If you've made it here, you've felt what it means to heal. Like, comment, and share this story. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Mr. Favor Tales. Because here, every ending is a new beginning.